Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Taylor and Serrano are closing in on a trilogy deal. According to Eddie Hearn, we're negotiating with MVP for Taylor vs. Serrano 3 for a fight to take place in America.
All of their fights have been stateside.
Potentially in New York. We're speaking to MVP's Nikisa Badarian and trying to finalize negotiations for that fight. In the second, in their rematch, I felt that Amanda had done enough to win the fight. The judges saw it the other way, and so it's hard to say what Amanda can do differently going into another fight with Katie. And if she is going into another fight with Katie, it's conceivable that the two belts she currently holds at featherweight could go vacant this calendar year, which just got started.
Same way that Katie Taylor dropped her titles at 135 because she's undisputed at 140.
That's the same way that Amanda may end up dropping her titles at 126 because her next fight is at 140. And depending on what happens with that,
say she wins,
becomes undisputed at 140, there won't be much need to hang on to those two titles she has at 126.
Spain's own Jennifer Miranda is in a pole position to challenge for Amanda's WBA title.
Former IBF featherweight champion Sarah Mahfoud of Denmark is in a pole position to challenge for Amanda's WBO title. Germany's own Nina Menke has the IBF, and Australia's own Sky Nicholson has the WBC.
I think Sky beats the lot of them. In the absence of Amanda Serrano, Sky Nicholson could become the most dominant force at this weight. I don't think Jennifer Miranda beats her.
Or Nina Menke, and Sky already beat Sarah Mahfoud for what was the vacant WBC title.
Sky could become the most dominant force at this weight in Amanda's stead.
Back over to Amanda and Katie for what is the most sensible and sensical fight for both these fighters at this stage of their careers that are winding down. I think collectively we can all agree on that.
I think that the trilogy will be under the MVP banner, not the Matchroom banner, and I think that Netflix will be the broadcaster, not DAZN.
The reason for it, they're willing to pay out more money for the fight for the trilogy than DAZN is. So for Katie, it makes all the sense in the world, and of course for Amanda.
Makes perfect sense.
I wouldn't give Amanda more than 1 or 2 more fights before she wraps it up, before she calls it a career. Win or lose with Katie Taylor.
Katie?
Katie made some mention of not just having a trilogy with Amanda, but another trilogy with Chantel Cameron, which is also warranted because they're 1-1 with each other now.
No.
What Chantel's gonna do while she waits?
Beats me.
You know, ever since she migrated from Matchroom over to Queensbury, we don't hear that much about her, which is funny because she's already fought 2 times under the Queensbury Promotions banner. They are keeping her busy, but she seems less visible than before.
Well, maybe it's because Queensbury isn't quite as international as Matchroom is.
And let's be honest, they don't push the girls and promote the girls quite as much as Matchroom does, but that's what Chantel Cameron wanted. That's where she wanted to go, and that's where she is.
I feel like a Katie Taylor trilogy is contingent upon an Amanda Serrano trilogy. That for her to make it to Chantel, she has to beat Amanda one more time.
And if she doesn't, I don't think there's going to be a Chantel Cameron trilogy. Can't really blame her for prioritizing a trilogy with Amanda over Chantel when the trilogy with Amanda pays better. And this is prize fighting after all. The size of the prize matters.
Money talks and bullshit walks.
Bullshit takes the BX-19.
Bullshit!
And it just is what it is. We'll talk more about the trilogy once it is finalized. In men's super middleweight news, Oscar De La Hoya slams Canelo's fight with William Scull, asking, "What are you doing?" Oscar De La Hoya has slammed Canelo Alvarez's decision to fight William Scull in his next fight in May. Canelo faces the IBF super middleweight champion in a fight that could have happened last year. Canelo was scheduled to face Scull when the latter was his IBF mandatory for his undisputed title. But Canelo ended up getting stripped after he chose to face Edgar Berlanga on Mexican Independence Day weekend instead. The decision was seen as a way for Canelo to earn a lucrative purse since Berlanga's Puerto Rican background could sell the fight.
That proved successful, as the event drew 650,000 pay-per-view buys, bringing in a live gate of 17 million.
And thus, if the question is, what is Canelo doing? He's doing what he always does. He's making money. You hate to see it. It was also the right decision since Canelo was going to go up against UFC 306, which was holding the first combat sports event at the Sphere. Scull ended up facing Vladimir Shishkin for the newly vacated IBF title as he secured a unanimous decision to get the belt. A win over Scull makes Canelo undisputed for a second time at super middleweight, going down in history once again.
That's what he's doing. He's making history.
Canelo is then expected to face Terence Crawford in September in a defense of what would be his undisputed title. But De La Hoya is not pleased with the Scull fight. He was adamant that boxing fans wanted to see the David Benavidez bout.
I don't doubt that they do, and it was a fight that I myself was hoping would materialize.
But it doesn't look like it's going to. They are now separated by weight. Canelo is at 168, David is now at 175, and I don't think he's dropping back down.
I don't think Canelo's moving up.
His schedule is booked for the foreseeable future, so in a word, that ship has sailed, and it's not going to happen. David Benavidez was the WBC interim super middleweight champion for more than 2 years, but he failed to get the Canelo fight after the latter reportedly wanted 150 to 200 million to make the bout. The WBC would not strip Canelo or call the mandatory, meaning Benavidez moved up to 175. Benavidez defeated David Morrell Jr. in his last fight to become both the WBC and WBA interim light heavyweight champion, and the fight between him and Dimitri Bivol has been ordered.
So where he didn't get his crack at the apple at 168, he can now get it at 175.
Dimitri Bivol is expected to face Artur Beterbiev in a trilogy, after which Benavidez could get his shot, but the WBC recently said Bivol must face Benavidez next, leaving boxing fans with plenty to think about either way. It reduces the chances of fans seeing a Canelo and Benavidez fight, but it is still possible if Benavidez were to become undisputed at 175, giving Canelo more of an incentive to take that fight. De La Hoya was not happy with the Scull fight.
Well, Oscar De La Hoya hasn't been happy for the last 4 going on 5 years since Canelo left him. Let's not pretend he's not just using David as a pawn, as a reason to keep trashing Canelo Alvarez, still angry that he left him. He never got over it.
Canelo, what are you doing? People want to see big fights. They want to see Benavidez. To a certain extent, they want to see Crawford. The big mega events, especially towards the end of your career. This is the 4th quarter of Canelo's career, so you might as well give them the big fights. Is his career his choices? 10, 15 years from now, are we going to say you ducked David Benavidez or you gave us a great fight with Benavidez? That's the question.
I think that all depends on what kind of legacy David goes on to have. Is he going to give us a reason to remember his name 10 to 15 years from now? Because I don't see one yet.
I think it would be a great fight. I think it's a pick'em fight. That's why I don't understand. Fight the very best. He's the elite at the top. You might as well fight the very best. Whoever they put in front of you, that's what legends do.
As if to imply that Canelo is not a living legend already. I hate to disappoint you, Oscar, and so many David Benavidez fans, but Canelo Alvarez could retire right now, and if he did, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Addressing the question, what will people say about Canelo 10 to 15 years from now if he doesn't fight David? That depends on what David does. That really does depend on whether or not David has the kind of career worth remembering.
Because if he doesn't, he'll be just another boxer whose name was lost in the annals of history, in the annals of time.
He has that opportunity in front of him right now with Dimitri Bivol, who the World Boxing Council has ordered to fight him. But in the subsequent days that have followed Saturday's action, we haven't seen or heard much of anything from David Benavidez.
The last we heard, he left Saudi Arabia in a hurry shortly after arriving. And that's it.
Left Saudi Arabia without taking in the main event to amass a scouting report on the winner. Canelo Alvarez's legacy doesn't have very much riding on a David Benavidez fight, and Oscar's just being facetious.
David is just the latest excuse that Oscar is using to continually take shots at what used to be his fighter. Anybody could see that.
You know, I never saw Bob Arum spend as much time as Oscar is spending on a fighter that left him. You know, I never saw Bob trashing Mikey Garcia or trashing Manny Pacquiao after they left Top Rank. Terence Crawford,
Shakur Stevenson.
I never saw Bob or anybody at Top Rank spend the time on them that Oscar's been spending on Canelo for the last 4 going on 5 years. I never saw Eddie Hearn spend this kind of time on any fighter that up and decided they wanted to leave Matchroom. Not the amount of time that Oscar still spends on Canelo.
He makes it seem like this is all for the betterment of boxing and the greater good, but boxing's gonna be fine. Boxing's gonna be alright. There have been a lot of fights, big ones, some bigger than this, that didn't happen.
This is just another. And any fighter, every fighter that has found themselves in the same position as a Canelo Alvarez is always going to have a guy or some guys claiming that they were ducked.
David Benavidez is to Canelo what Keith Thurman was to Floyd Mayweather.
It's the same thing, and as the years progress, Floyd Mayweather's legacy as a boxer is not measured against whether or not he fought Keith Thurman, because he actually has one. He has a legacy, and Keith doesn't.
What may have seemed like a hot-button topic at the time, so many years ago, so many years later, isn't even a talking point.
So when I think about David and Canelo, how is that not the same thing? That unless David goes on to have a legacy of his own, a real career of his own, and gives us a reason to remember him 10 to 15 years from now, Oscar is grossly overstating his significance, his relevance to Canelo Alvarez's legacy.
David has a chance?
You have the opportunity in front of you to take on the man that beat Canelo Alvarez, that some people say took him to school. That's what's in front of you right now. That's what Oscar should be advocating for.
You can't get Canelo Alvarez? Get the guy that took him to school. Get the guy that beat him and become undisputed in the process. People don't seem to have the energy for that fight and that conversation that they still keep for this one.
We know why.
Rationalizing why David would have boarded a 12 to 15 hour flight halfway around the world just to leave in a hurry the same day he arrived.
Retract something that I said because I was wrong. I said that Bivol dropped Benavidez at Churchill Boxing Gym with the jab, and I remembered it wrong. It was Benavidez who dropped Bivol. And I don't know why I remembered it wrong, but I did. And I suspected actually when I was saying it that I might have gotten it wrong. But it was David Benavidez who dropped Bivol.
Peter Berg had to correct himself publicly after recounting what happened between David and Dimitri in sparring. Apparently, David dropped Dimitri in sparring. That's fantastic. Now do it when it counts. Do it under the hot lights. Do it for a big bag. Do it for undisputed.
I have no stock in sparring stories, gym stories.
And I never have. Where Martin Bacoli may have dropped or stopped Joseph Parker during a sparring session, Joseph Parker won the fight, the actual fight. Where Zerto may have got the best of Dimitri during a sparring session. What happened when they fought?
Dimitri Bivol won. Dimitri won the actual fight.
I can go on, but that's not the point. Sparring sessions and what's happening behind closed doors. David has a major opportunity in front of him right now.
I had to upload this correction.
As Peter Berg has corrected himself, his account of events, because we're big on accountability here. Not gonna run with a narrative. David, you did good against Dimitri in sparring. Now do it when it counts.
If it's that easy, you should come out on top.
There's no reason not to do it. You want to be remembered? You want to have a legacy of your own? There's your chance.
Your opportunity.
This isn't just some guy with a belt or some belts at a new weight. This is the guy who actually took Canelo to school. And so if facing him requires you to work with Turkey or travel to Saudi, is that not worth it?
Or is fealty to Al Heyman's PBC more important?
More important than your own legacy and how you will be remembered.
Go for it.
I think there's no shame in losing to a fighter like Dimitri Bivol, that caliber of boxer, and I've no doubts that David would. He would lose. There seems some residual apprehensiveness. It's because of how they've built him up, what they've made him out to be, what he is not.
This should be his top priority.
Because what's the alternative? What bodies does Al Heyman have for you to fight over on PBC Island? And what else? Moving up to cruiserweight to challenge Zerto, who Dimitri already beat.
Is that your alternative?
This should be David's top priority. Not loyalty to an outfit that only got you out there once the entirety of last year. And how many times are they going to get you out in this one?
This should be David's top priority. This should be everybody's talking point. Instead of beating a dead horse about Canelo, urge David to fight Dimitri.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, in men's cruiserweight news, Newly reinstalled WBC Cruiserweight Champion Badou Jack seems to have had a meeting with His Excellency Turki El Sheikh saying, "We're back, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Fight date coming soon. Stay tuned." Badou Jack, so soon after being reinstated as WBC Cruiserweight Champion, has a mandatory in the queue. He's under orders to face Canada's own Ryan Rozicki. And it was earlier this month, on the 6th, news broke that Three Lions Promotions, who promote Ryan, they actually won the rights to the fight. They were supposed to be the ones that promote it.
I don't think they're going to be the ones that promote it now.
From the very beginning, I struggled with the idea that Badou Jack is going to defend his title in some small hall in Nova Scotia. This fight might be worth something to Turkey.
Turkey might be able to find use for these two guys and use for this fight as a decorative item on one of his upcoming Ring Magazine cards.
And you ask yourself, why would Three Lions Promotions, who promote Ryan, give up the rights to the fight to Turkey? Don't they want their fighter, the house fighter, to have that advantage? The advantage of being the house fighter and the hometown fighter? Why would they give that up?
Money.
Three Lions Promotions was reported to be the lone bidder for this show, and I don't imagine they had to put up very much because they don't have very much. What are we really talking about?
Few hundred thou?
Most of which would end up going to Badou Jack anyway, since he's the defending champion and he would get the lion's share per the split.
If you go to a purse bid, the split is assigned by the WBC. So if you're Three Lions Promotions and most of the money that you put up is going to go to the other guy anyway,
it might be more lucrative for you to hand over those rights to Turki El Sheikh, who likely will pay one of these fighters what you intended to pay both.
Huh?
Let's say that the winning bid was somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 or $400,000.
You would have to split that between two fighters, where Turkey can pay that to the both of them.
And then some. That both Badou Jack and Ryan Rozicki stand to make more money if you give the rights to Turkey than if you try to do it yourself. Three Lions Promotions gets to make their money off of a percentage of Ryan Rozicki's purse, since he still is their fighter, even if this isn't their show. Not anymore. They still get paid.
They still would have got something out of it.
So now all that's left to do is for them to officially announce it, and then for us to see, what does Badou Jack have left? Because he's in his 40s, he hasn't fought in 2 years, and Ryan is a bona fide cruiserweight. He's never been anything else. He's an aggressive customer.
Badou Jack may be a better boxer tactically and technically and the more experienced fighter.
But he has been out so long, and that he's up there in age, it's not a foregone conclusion that he keeps his belt. It's not a foregone conclusion that he wins. This could be Badou Jack's swan song.
We'll see.